Is it really anti-Semitism we're seeing across America and across the globe? Or is it something else, something much deeper and much more profound? All right, the Hamas attack, the unprovoked attack on the Holy Land of Israel, Israel's and their defense forces, their bombings, their pushback, the supposed land invasion that may be coming, and the war that is ongoing, that may extend for a while, whether it remains there just in Gaza or expands up to Lebanon with Hezbollah. We don't know yet. But either way, it has spawned all kinds of protests and commentary across America and across the world. And everything that isn't 100% pro-Israel is being termed anti-Semitic. And I'm going to explore today whether that's really the case or not. Anti-Semitism is prejudiced or even hatred against the Jews, thinking they're an inferior race and hating them, much like, Hitler showed us all with the Nazis. We're told that in the United States, I have no reason to doubt it, but anti-Semitic incidents continue to rise yearly. And the reason, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not an expert on anti-Semitic events or on the Jewish religion. I'm going to tell you about a little of my experience with that. But so I'm just giving you a reaction, honest reaction from an honest guy, done a little research on it, but by no means am I an expert on any of this stuff. But we're told anti-Semitic events continue to rise in America. And of course, hatred of Jews can take many forms, not just violent attacks, not just events. It could be from, canceling, on social media, cancel culture stuff, or banning from entering this or being part of that, or, it can happen a lot of subtle ways in daily life. At Harvard, I'm a Harvard graduate, as you may know, economics major. We had a big rooming group. A handful of them were Jewish, some very, very devout Orthodox Jews. And I learned a lot about Jewish customs and the religion through my roommates. And of course, the further Harvard, there's a couple other Harvard connections. It was those 30 plus student groups at Harvard that wrote the letter, right? Basically saying that all the violence that's happening right now in that region of the world is Israel's fault, not Hamas's fault. And then you might have heard about the one student, and there's been many of them with many firms, but the first one, the first law firm called Winston and Strawn, who revoked their offer of employment, apparently, to one of the students who co-signed one of those protest letters. Now, this particular letter and this particular student was from New York University, but Winston and Strawn, one of my roommates, is a partner there, very senior level partner, one of the top lawyers in the country. And I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet. Now, he's not even a conservative. This guy's center left. But, anti-Semitism, can't be tolerated accordingly. Now, I applaud them because nobody wants a troublemaker like that in the firm. Nobody wants that. But again, is it anti-Semitism? In this person's case, I don't know. But we're going to talk more about this a little bit more. Now, anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, whatever you want to call it, has been around for thousands of years. Of course, the Nazis and the Holocaust are the most obvious example of all that, where 6 million Jews in Europe were exterminated, tortured, murdered, whatever you want to call it. It was horrible. It was horrific. It was unforgivable. It must never happen again. But anti-Semitism didn't start or end with the Holocaust. It goes back to the days of Egypt and the pharaohs and the time of Moses, when the Jewish people were slaves to the Egyptians and their ruling monarchs over there. And some people claim Holocaust denial as a form of anti-Semitism. I'm not sure. See, this is where I think it gets a little fuzzy. Just because you might be ignorant and not believe or not have any knowledge of what happened with the Holocaust, does that mean you hate Jews or think they're an inferior class? Probably, but not necessarily, right? That's a difference. So just because you don't agree with the Jewish religion or whatever claims the Jewish people want or whatever actions their government takes or whatever wars they engage in, doesn't mean you're an anti-Semite, right? But you can, just like we throw the term racism around way too much. Just because you mention something about race, unless you believe that a certain group of people is inferior or superior to another group of people, just because you happen to mention something about some racial aspect of life or some person doesn't mean make you a racist. The term is thrown around way too much, and I think the term anti-Semitism is being thrown around way too much right now. So the question I'm asking here is this: what's going on in America and across the world? Are all these protests we're seeing, all these letters from the students, are they all from anti-Semitic people? I don't think so. I think it's something far less specific about hatred or disdain for Jews, and I think it's much broader, and I think it's a much sicker thing that's going on and indicative of the larger society we live in today. Now, look, those representatives from the squad, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, they're from Muslim backgrounds. They hate the Jews. They are anti-Semites. There's no question about that. And there are many other people like that as well. But when CNN takes a side against Israel, when we see some of these student groups protesting and people protesting or signing letters, and there's white and there's blacks and there's Muslims and there's all manner of people in there, are they all necessarily anti-Semitic? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think a lot of this, not all, but look, as we said, anti-Semitism has been around a long time. Donald Trump and those who have Trump derangement system are one part of this group who I don't believe are anti-Semites. Just because they hate Trump, they want to hate America, or they want to hate anything Trump did. You know, his Abraham Accords were, they want to hate it all because of his close alliance with Israel and his support of that. I'll get to that in a second. But here's why I say it, because some of the research I did do, a new national poll from the Anti-Defamation League, this is a very credible national group, and the University of Chicago, I'm reading here, they did a project and they found that highly anti-Semitic, or at least so-called anti-Semitic Americans are 3 times more likely to support violence to achieve certain political goals compared to the general population. So, where am I going with this? I don't believe anti-Semites or so-called anti-Semites are anti-Semitic. I just believe they're people who believe in violence to achieve their political ends, Black Lives Matter, whatever the case may be. These are far left, mentally deranged, un-American, unconstitutional, protesters, advocacy nuts who want their way and will condone violence in order to get that way. And whether that's violence against whites, whether that's violence against Jews, whether that's violence against straight people, they don't care. They just advocate for violence. So if they're advocating for violence or trying to, or condoning violence against Jewish people, does that necessarily make them anti-Semitic? No. I think that makes them moronic. I think that makes them somebody sick with something like Trump derangement syndrome. I'm going to get more into that in a second. But I'm going to give you more from this poll from the Anti-Defamation League. They say that Americans who accept multiple, particularly hateful anti-Jewish tropes, little sayings and memes and things, to express support for the use of violence, they're also 3 times more likely, 15% to 5% more likely to also advocate for violence against Donald Trump. That's why I call it Trump derangement syndrome. A lot of people I know were good conservatives until Trump came along, and because they hate Trump or misunderstood Trump, now they're not even conservatives anymore. I think the same thing is happening here. These are just people who are sick. These are people who want to win and achieve their goals no matter what, violence or what, Jewish, white, straight, whatever the case may be, no matter what. According to this poll, likewise, these people who advocate for violence are also want to use violence to go against people who don't believe that abortion should be available anytime, anywhere, to anybody at any age and funded by taxpayer money. They also support violence against those groups. So what you're seeing here is what we've talked about often on this show, a negative social contagion, right? These people, they start believing things and it spreads. And other weak people who don't have any inner fortitude, who don't have a strong foundation of their own personal or patriotic principles, will just follow the crowd. And therefore, in this case, anti-Semitic, if they're following the crowd, support for Palestinian people, they're deemed anti-Semitic when they don't know any, but they're not anti-Semitic. They don't hate Jews. They don't want to kill Jews. They don't think Jews are necessarily inferior. They just want to join the bandwagon of trying to protect this aggrieved class of Palestinians. The two are different. Often they overlap, but the two are very different. So I think what you're seeing here is this negative social contagion of hating America and loving our country's enemies, even if it goes communism. I don't think a lot of people who are professed communists or support are really communists. I just think they join the crowd because they hate America, or they want to be different, or they want to have their agenda item, which is supported by communists, pass. So they'll sell their souls. They don't really believe it, but they'll sell their souls to have their agenda item won. And most of those agenda items have to do with these identity politics victims groups. And we've seen it with the transgender people. We've seen it with, single moms, or, LGBT community, or, of course, Blacks and Hispanics. And yes, the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people have been successful in positioning themselves as a victim group, as somebody that these weak-minded people who will follow anything their tribal leaders say that earn their support, not because they're anti-Semitic, but because, hey, this is some other victim group that I have to get behind, and I have to support them at all costs, even if it means appearing to be anti-Semitic. So my theory about anti-Semitism is that it's not really being anti-Semitic. And I think this theory also explains how so many people can get on board with the same deranged and delusional concepts of, white supremacy, of hating the founding fathers, of taking down historical statues and monuments and all that, the disdain of God, the love of the transgender and LGBT community, and the hate of us who are straight and religious. How do these things spread so rapidly against all common sense, against thousands of years of conventional wisdom and beliefs, indeed, against reality itself? I mean, if you don't believe there's a difference between men and women, if you can't define what a woman is, if you don't understand that an XX chromosome and an XY chromosome make you inherently different, permanently different, you can't cross over, how do people believe such nonsense? So I think this virus, this mental contagion virus of anti-Semitism, of transgenderism, of white supremacy, whatever you want to call it, is a virus, is a negative emotional contagion that's spreading across, just like the COVID virus is spreading across this country, and it's plaguing our society. It's plaguing our schools. It's plaguing our children. And I think the same thing is happening with so-called anti-Semitism. Again, they're not anti-Semites, I don't believe. They've just decided to latch on to the latest, the latest fad of victim group of the day. And right now, that victim group of the day is the Palestinian people. Not necessarily the terrorists. Some of them, some of the real anti-Semites support the terrorists, but a lot of just have caught on to this victimization game. These are seriously ill people, though. We got to remember that. And they're in charge of many of our schools. They're in charge of many of our institutions, our libraries, political office. And as I've mentioned so many times, it's time for us to take back territory. We have to start running and winning seats in office. We have to start getting appointed to this board or to that commission. And we have to start being the heads of libraries. And we have to start being on corporate boards and in the media and in academia. In America, it begins with you and me. We have to push back everywhere we encounter these delusions, this nonsense, like those law firms did, who revoked their employment offers. Congratulations to them. In America, it's always been up to the people. Always. We just don't realize it, and we just don't act upon it. We have the power here. Despite the tyrants, despite those in power who want to perpetually try to impose their values and their agendas upon the rest of us. It's still always within the power of you and me and the rest of us to have an America the way it was intended to be. Thomas Jefferson said, eternal vigilance is the price of democracy. We all know that quote, but you know that quote, which not everybody agrees Thomas Jefferson said, but it's widely attributed to him. It goes on, and let me tell you a little bit more about what that quote said. Eternal vigilance is the price of democracy. Be vigilant, guard your mind against negative thoughts. The candle of liberty has always been kept and lit by a few vigilant, by the few. We are the few right now. They are the many when it comes to position of power. They are inundated. They have been taken over and sickened with these negative thoughts, with these non-reality belief systems. You and I haven't. The candle of liberty has always been kept lit by the few vigilant. Will you be one of those few? Will you push back wherever you see it? Or will you turn a blind eye or an appeasing eye or just say, hey, it's not my business. It is your business. It's all of our business. It's our nation's business. Again, anti-Semitism is getting thrown around way too often right now. I don't think it applies in many cases. Hey, it's out there, just like racism is out there. It's out there, but it's not out there as broadly as you think. This is part of the left spinning another false narrative, just like they have with racism, just like they have with transgenderism and so many climate change and everything else. Will you be one of those few who will help keep America's candle